of Pakistan by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 22. Karachi, Pakistan Zindabad, 1947. On June 20th, 1947, members of the Bengal Legislative Assembly voted for partition of their province by a large majority. 3 days later, the Punjabi Assembly members opted for a similar Caesarean solution to the communal problem that had burned much of Lahore and Amritsar to the ground. Since legislature also voted 33 to 20 to join Pakistan, thus, we can now look upon the creation of Pakistan on the 15th August as legally decided upon. Mountbatten reported on June 27th. Jinnah was invited into the Viceroy's office that day to sit with Nehru and Patel, as well as Liaquat and Baldev, on a new partition council which addressed itself to the creation of boundary commissions. 4 High Court judges, 2 chosen by Congress and 2 by the League, were to sit on each commission for partitioning the Punjab and Bengal. Jinnah suggested Britain's distinguished barrister, Sir Cyril Radcliffe, to chair those boundary commissions. Radcliffe, who had never visited India and expressed no known opinions on its problems, was unanimously accepted and would soon decide the destiny of millions of Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims by the power of his repeatedly required casting vote. Nehru subsequently expressed grave misgivings about Radcliffe because of his close conservative associations, and he urged that the federal court serves instead as final arbitrator. But Jinnah was adamantly opposed. Radcliffe reached New Delhi on July 8th, giving him precisely 5 weeks to draw new national boundaries across whose lines, bitterly disputed by both countries, approximately 10 million refugees would run terrified in opposite directions. Separate committees went to work to partition the army and other elements of the vast administrative machine that had kept British India running for some 90 years. Mountbatten hoped and indeed expected to be asked to stay on as Joint Governor General over both new dominions at once, symbolizing their friendly and continued cooperation while expediting the process of the final division of assets in an equitable manner. Jinnah would hear nothing of that, however, insisting he must become Governor General of Pakistan himself. Jinnah suspected both Mountbattens of open favoritism to Congress, knowing how intimate they were with Nehru, and feared that Pakistan might be compromised or possibly suffer as a stepchild under Mountbatten. Jinnah was also acutely conscious of the tuberculosis consuming his lungs and knew little time remained to his life. He was eager to enjoy at least a taste of power to which he had given so much of his energy. As Prime Minister, however, he would have been saddled with daily political as well as administrative responsibilities and preferred to leave those to a younger man. Being Governor General would raise him eye to eye with Mountbatten, Attlee, Smuts, and all the other heads of dominions of all the Commonwealth the world over. It was clearly the only rank worthy of Quaid-e-Azam, and it seemed a fitting first and only position for him to hold in the nation he had sired. It will be remembered that I reported to the Cabinet Committee that Nehru had put in writing a request to me to remain on as the Governor General of India, Mountbatten wrote on July 4th. Before I went to London, Jinnah said that although he thought 2 Governor Generals would be better than 1, he asked me specifically to stay on as a Super Governor General over the other 2. Mountbatten could not get cabinet approval for that proposal, however. Nevertheless, he and his staff continued to press Jinnah for an answer to the Joint Governor General idea they were also anxious to initiate. India, like Pakistan, depended initially on British officers to head all 3 military services, while Field Marshal Auchinleck actually continued in overall command of both Dominion armies for almost half a year following August 15th. Nehru, like Jinnah, depended on several British governors inviting Sir John Colville of Bombay and Sir Archibald Nye of Madras to serve independent India in their same official capacities. Nothing Mountbatten could say made Jinnah budge from his resolve to take direct control of Pakistan. After much soul searching, considerable misgivings, and further consultation with London, the Mountbattens decided nonetheless to remain in New Delhi for almost another year as originally planned. In moving the third heading of this bill, Cripps informed the Commons on July 15th when he opened the final debate of the Indian Independence Bill. I am introducing what will be the last debate in this House on the Indian affairs. This bill will launch a new and, let us hope, a happier era. Attlee concluded the debate that passed this historic measure, thus setting up two independent dominions of Pakistan and India on August 15, 1947. On Friday, July 18th, King George VI added his talismanic seal of assent to the new act. Jinnah held a press conference in mid-July and assured minorities in his inchoate dominion that they would have protection with regard to their religion, faith, life, property and culture. They would in all respect be citizens of Pakistan without any discrimination. The same principle would apply to the minorities in India as well. Mr. Jinnah sincerely hoped that the relations between Pakistan and India would be friendly and cordial. I resigned myself fatalistically to the coming disaster. Penderel Moon wrote that July. It was easy to predict disaster, but what was the exact form that it would take? The senior superintendent of police, Delhi, asked for his opinion as to what would happen, replied crudely and tersely. Once a line of division is drawn in the Punjab, all Sikhs to the west of it and all Muslims to the east of it will have their chopped off. Until August 14th, thousands of Sikhs and Hindus continued to believe that Lahore would fall to India. So instead of moving their valuables from that capital of the Punjab, they left most of what they owned behind when the boundary line was finally made public, racing east in panic and seeking only to save their lives. Mountbatten flew to Lahore on Sunday, July 20th, and met with the Punjab Partition Committee, suggesting that the new government of East Punjab's unessential personnel all be moved out to Simla by August 10th. But Radcliffe's final award would remain top secret till the eve of partition and independence. In New Delhi, the interim coalition government virtually ceased to function. Nehru and Liaquat were barely speaking to one another. Separate provisional administrations for India and Pakistan functioned virtually independently during those last frantic weeks when the assets of the subcontinent were divided in the most hasty, haphazard fashion, much the way a hostile divorcing couple might of an evening sort out their possessions. Governor General designate Jinnah was busy selling his houses with the mansion in New Delhi, bringing a handsome profit from a Marwari merchant and the estate atop Malabar Hill in Bombay, going to a Western European consulate. Fatma supervised the packing, for all had to be ready August 7th, when the Jinnahs flew off to Karachi to prepare their new mansion for the following week of historic ceremony. Meanwhile, Mountbatten also preoccupied himself with matters of vital interest to an admiral of the fleet. I got both Jinnah and Nehru to agree that the navies would fly the white ensign at the ensign staff and the Dominion flag at the jack staff, and that the governors general would fly the regular Dominion governor general's flag and with the king's crest and the name of the Dominion. When I showed Jinnah the design of his new flag, he announced that he had changed his mind and he intended to design his own flag with his own monogram on it. and he regretted that he could not allow his ships to fly the white ensign. He was only saved from being struck by the arrival of the other members of the Partition Council at this moment. However, I sent Ismay round to beat him up as soon as possible, and Jinnah claimed that I must have misunderstood him, as of course he was keen that Pakistan Navy should fly the white ensign, and talked glibly about the brotherhood of the seas. The Mountbattens invited Jinnah and Fatima to dine with them on Friday, July 25th, and as Campbell Johnson recalled, it was quite a small and informal affair, comprising only house guests and some of Mountbatten's staff. Jinnah completely monopolized the conversation by cracking a series of very lengthy and generally unfunny jokes. When Mountbatten tried to even out the conversation by talking to the guests next to him and leaving Jinnah to tell one of his stories to Lady Mountbatten, Jinnah broke off and interrupted across the table with, "I think Mountbatten would like to hear this one." It is customary for the viceroy representing the king to precede his guests to and from the dining room. But immediately this dinner was over, the Jinnahs got up at the same time as their excellencies and walked out with them. Jinnah, of course, considered himself no less than Lord Mountbatten at this point, the Governor General of his own dominion, the first person of Asian birth ever to achieve so exalted a rank of Commonwealth power. The rulers of the princely states all knew that by August 15th they had to accede to one or the other dominion, since British paramountcy and its protective umbrella would disappear from their lands on that day. Yet many a Maharaja, Nawab, and Nizam found it almost impossible to decide which way to jump. Bhopal in central India chafed at the bit of integration into a dominion towards which its Nawab felt the strongest personal antipathy. Kashmir and Hyderabad were to prove the most difficult problems. The Hindu Maharaja of Kashmir, Hari Singh, refused to join either dominion, fearing he would be dethroned by Jinnah for religious reasons, yet hating Nehru with a bitter hatred because of his socialist proclivities and democratic demands. The Nizam of Hyderabad preferred to join Pakistan if he was not allowed to remain independent, but surrounded as he was by Indian territory and with 85% of his state's population Hindu, he was forced the following Septembers by Operation Polo to integrate his domain with the Indian Union. Mahatma Gandhi trekked off to Noakhali in Bengal to seek to calm communal passions there on the eve of partitions, and much to Mountbatten's delight. Gandhi has announced his decision to spend the rest of his life in Pakistan, looking after the minorities. This will infuriate Jinnah, but will be a great relief to Congress for, as I said before, his influence is largely negative or even destructive and directed against the only man who has his feet firmly on the ground, Vallabhbhai Patel. Jinnah picked Lieutenant General Sir Frank W. Messervy, the commander of the Northern Army of British India, to serve as Pakistan's first commander-in-chief, and Messervy submitted a most disturbing report to Mountbatten, warning that the Northwest Frontier Defence Forces would fall from 67 battalions to 45, a number of which would only be at half strength immediately after August 15, 1947. To mitigate the immediate danger, Messervy suggested re-enlisting up to 10,000 demobilized Punjabi Musalman and Pathan infantrymen, while warning Afghanistan against seeking any border changes. Jinnah and his sister flew out of New Delhi in the Viceroy's Dakota on the morning of August 7th. Thousands of admirers were waiting at the airport in Karachi, and cheers of Pakistan Zindabad reverberated across the sands of Sindh and echoed over the Arabian Sea. Refugees kept pouring into Karachi along every road as the provincial port grew overnight into a national capital with its population doubling within a matter of months. Throngs of cheering onlookers lined most of the road from the airport to the government house, formerly the residence of the governor of Sindh and now about to become Jinnah's last bungalow. Walked up the steps of that white Victorian mansion. Jinnah turned to Naval Lieutenant S.M. Ehsan, transferred from Mountbatten staff to the Qaid-e-Azam's, confessing, "Do you know, I never expected to see Pakistan in my lifetime. We have to be very grateful to God for what we have achieved." 2 days later, Sindh's governor-elect Sir Ghulam Hidayatullah, Jinnah's old Bombay companion, gave a posh party in honor of his great leader at the elegant Karachi Club, where Jinnah said, "Yes, I am Karachi born, and it was on the sands of Karachi that I played marbles in my boyhood. I was schooled at Karachi. Let us trust each other. Let us judge by results, not by theories. With the help of every section, I see that every class is represented in this huge gathering. Let us work in double shift, if necessary, to make the sovereign state of Pakistan really happy, really united, and really powerful." Pakistan's Constituent Assembly met in Karachi for the first time on August 11th and unanimously elected Jinnah to preside over its meetings and amid a thunderous applause as its first business. Jinnah took the chair, thanking the assembled delegates for the greatest honor that is possible for this sovereign assembly to confer by electing me as your first president. I sincerely hope that we shall make this Constituent Assembly an example to the world. The Constituent Assembly has got two main functions to perform. The first is the very onerous and responsible task of framing our future constitution of Pakistan, and the second of functioning as a full and complete sovereign body as the federal legislature of Pakistan. We have to do the best we can. Then he seemed suddenly to awaken from a dream. Looking around at the packed and steaming hall, filled with eager, perspiring faces, all turned to him for inspiration. Orders, instruction on every minute, question of how to build a new state. You know really that not only we ourselves are wondering, but I think the whole world is wondering at this unprecedented cyclonic revolution which has brought about the plan of creating and establishing two independent sovereign dominions in this subcontinent. As it has been unprecedented. There is no parallel in the history of the world. This mighty subcontinent, with all kinds of inhabitants, has been brought under a plan which is titanic, unknown, unparalleled. He could not quite believe it yet. He had won. The highest court had returned another verdict in his favor. Pakistan was to be born in just a few days. But what exactly was it, and how was it going to work? There had never been time to consider details. After all, never strength enough, nor help, not even time to write out a single speech in advance. Dealing with our first function in this assembly, I cannot make any well considered pronouncement at this moment, but I shall say a few things as they occur to me. The first and foremost thing that I would like to emphasize is remember that you are now a sovereign legislative body and you have got all the power. It therefore places on you the gravest responsibility as to how you should take your decisions. The first observation that I would like to make is this. You will no doubt agree with me that the first duty of the government is to maintain law and order, so that the life, property, and religious beliefs of its subjects are fully protected by the state. The second thing that occurs to me is this. One of the biggest curses from which India is suffering is bribery and corruption. That really is a poison. We must put that down with an iron hand, and I hope that you will take adequate measures as soon as it is possible. Black marketing is another curse. I know that black marketeers are frequently caught and punished. Judicial sentences are passed, or sometimes fines only are imposed. Now you have to tackle this monster, which today is a colossal crime against society. In our distressed conditions, when we constantly face shortage of food, a citizen who does black marketing commits, I think, a greater crime than the biggest and the most grievous of crimes. These black marketeers are really knowing, intelligent, and ordinarily responsible people. I think they ought to be very severely punished because they undermine the entire system of control and cause wholesale starvation and what want and even death. The next thing that strikes me is this. Here, again, it is a legacy which has been passed on to us, the evil of nepotism and jobbery. This evil must be crushed relentlessly. I want to make it quite clear that I shall never tolerate any kind of jobbery, nepotism, or any influence directly or indirectly brought to bear upon me. I know there are people who do not quite agree with the division of India and the partition of Punjab and Bengal. Much has been said against it, but now that it has been accepted, it is the duty of every one of us to loyally abide by it and honorably act according to the agreement, which is now final and binding on all. But you must remember, as I have said, that this mighty revolution that has taken place is unprecedented. But the question is whether it was possible or practicable to act otherwise than what has been done. A division had to take place on both sides, the Hindustan and Pakistan. These are sections of people who may not agree with it, who may not like it, but in my judgment, there was no other solution, and I am sure future history will record its verdict in favor of it. And what is more, it will be proved by actual experience as we go on that was the only solution. Any idea of a united India could never have worked, and in my judgment, it would have led us to a terrific disaster. Maybe that view is correct, maybe it is not. That remains to be seen. He seemed unable to move his mind from that awesome question. For the first time, he openly challenged his own judgment, wondering aloud if it might not have been correct, sensing perhaps that the worst part of the dream, the true tragic nightmare of partition, was about to begin. The hurricane was waiting behind this cyclonic revolution. All the same, he continued in his uncharacteristic, troubled monologue of reflection before the perplexed mullahs, peers, nawabs, rajas, shahs, and khans, trying to fathom as well as follow his every word. In this division, it was impossible to avoid the question of minorities being in one dominion or the other. Now that it was unavoidable, there is no other solution. Now, what shall we do? Now, if we want to make this great state of Pakistan happy and prosperous, we should wholly and solely concentrate on the well being of the people and especially of the masses and poor. If you will work in cooperation, forgetting the past, burying the hatchet, you are bound to succeed. If you change your past and work together in a spirit that every one of you, no matter to what community he belongs, no matter what relations he had with you in the past, no matter what is his color, caste, or creed, is first, second, and last a citizen of this state with equal rights, privileges, and obligations, there will be no end to the progress you will make. I cannot emphasize it too much. We should begin to work in that spirit, and in course of time, all these angularities of the majority and minority communities, the Hindu community and the Muslim community, because even as regards Muslims you have Pathans, Punjabis, Shias, Sunnis, and so on. And among the Hindus, you have Brahmins, Vaishnavas, Khatris, and Bengalis, Madrasis, and so on will vanish. Indeed, if you ask me, this has been the biggest hindrance in the way of India to attain the freedom and independence. But for this, we would have been free people long, long ago. What a remarkable reversal it was, as though he had been transformed overnight, once again, into an old ambassador of Hindu Muslim unity that Sarojini Naidu loved. His mind was racing too swiftly for logical coherence, almost freely associating as he rambled extemporaneously. Was it, in fact, over now? Or was it all just about to begin? You are free. You are free to go to your temples. You are free to go to your mosques or to any other place of worship in the state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion or caste or creed. That has nothing to do with the business of the state. We are starting in the days when there is no discrimination, no distinction between one community and another, no discrimination between one caste or creed and another. We are starting with this fundamental principle that we are all citizens and equal citizens of one state. The people of England, in course of time, had to face the realities of the situation and had to discharge the responsibilities and burdens placed upon them by the government. Today, you might say with justice that Roman Catholics and Protestants do not exist. What exists now is that every man is a citizen, an equal citizen of Great Britain, all members of the nation. What was he talking about? He forgotten where he was? Had the cyclone of events so disoriented him that he was arguing the opposition's brief? Was he pleading for a melted India on the eve of Pakistan before those hundreds of thousands of terrified innocents were slaughtered, fleeing their homes, their fields, their ancestral villages, and running into an eternity of oblivion or a refuge camp in a strange land? Now, the Governor General designate continued. I think we should keep in front of us as our ideal, and you will find that in course of time, Hindus would cease to be Hindus and Muslims would cease to be Muslims. Not in the religious sense, because that is the personal faith of each individual, but in the political sense as citizens of the state. I shall always be guided by the principles of justice and fair play without any, as is put in the political language, prejudice or, in other words, partiality or favoritism. My guiding principle will be justice and complete impartiality, and I am sure that with your support and cooperation, I can look forward to Pakistan becoming one of the greatest nations of the world. Yet, even as he concluded on so optimistic a note, rumor had reached Liaquat Ali as well as Jinnah that the strategic Muslim majority Gurdaspur district of the Punjab, affording the only all-weather road access to Kashmir, was going to be awarded to East Punjab by Radcliffe. Liaquat warned Ismay that such a political decision would be viewed by Muslims as so grave a breach of faith as to imperil future friendly relations between Pakistan and the British. Mountbatten insisted, however, that he had resolutely kept himself out of the whole business of the Boundary Commission and had not so much as seen the final maps, which were only brought to his office by Radcliffe after he and his wife had flown from Delhi to Karachi on August 13th to help celebrate the formal transfer of power there by conveying His Majesty's as well as his own official greetings to the new dominion. Jinnah and Fatima awaited the Mountbattens, not at Karachi airport but inside the entrance hall of the government house, which had been decked up to look just like the Hollywood film set, and all four were subjected to takings and retakings under the dazzling light and sizzling heat of the arc lamps. Jinnah remained strangely aloof at the banquet which he hosted for the Mountbattens there that night. Liaquat and the other League leaders who had listened to his disjointed ramblings before the Constituent Assembly then insisted that he read from a prepared text, since the entire diplomatic corps as well as world press would be represented in that banquet hall. He rose to adjust his monocle to his eye, unfolding the text, reading softly, slowly. Your Excellency, Your Highness, and ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure in proposing a toast to His Majesty the King. The words had been fashioned for him by the best of his bright young clerks. Nothing of this toast was Jinnah's, only the frail voice that read it aloud in such perfect upper class English accent. Here, I would like to say, Your Excellency, Lord Mountbatten, how much we appreciate your having carried out wholeheartedly the policy and the principle that was laid down by the plan of June 3rd. Pakistan and Hindustan will always remember you. Perhaps he did inject the word Hindustan, insisting upon it, as so many of his followers would do, feeling it a more appropriate appellation for Pakistan's neighbor than India, which was, after all, just an English corruption of the name of Pakistan's major river artery, the Indus. Mountbatten sat at the dinner between Miss Jinnah and Begum Liaquat Ali Khan and reported they both pulled my leg about the midnight ceremonies in Delhi, saying that it was astounding that a responsible government could be guided by astrologers. I refrained from retorting that the whole Karachi program had to be changed because Jinnah had forgotten that it was Ramzan and had to change the lunch party he had himself suggested to a dinner party. Next morning, the Jinnahs drove from the government house to the Legislative Assembly Hall along a carefully guarded route lined with soldiers as well as police alerted to watch for possible assassins, since reports of Sikh plan to assassinate Jinnah on the day Pakistan was born had reached Mountbatten and Jinnah several days earlier. But only shouts of Pakistan Zindabad and Quaid-e-Azam Zindabad were hurled at his carriage. The Mountbattens followed in a separate carriage and inside the crowded semicircular chamber of Pakistan's parliament, which had been since Legislative Assembly. Lord Mountbatten graciously felicitated Jinnah and read the message from his cousin, King George, welcoming Pakistan into the Commonwealth. Jinnah replied, reading again from the carefully hammered out words of a text prepared by his staff. Your Excellency, I thank His Majesty on behalf of Pakistan Constituent Assembly and myself. I once more thank you and Lady Mountbatten for your kindness and good wishes. Yes, we are parting as friends, and I assure you that we shall not be wanting in friendly spirit with our neighbors and with all the nations of the world. Lady Mountbatten pressed Miss Jinnah's hand affectionately as Jinnah sat down after giving his address. A witness reported, if Jinnah's personality is cold and remote, it also has a magnetic quality. The sense of leadership is almost overpowering. Here indeed is Pakistan's King Emperor, Archbishop of Canterbury, Speaker and Prime Minister, concentrated into one formidable Quaid-e-Azam. Mountbatten was still worried about a possible assassination attempt and feared that if it was going to be tried against Jinnah, then was the time when he, as Governor General, should be driven back to the government house in an open carriage. It occurred to me that the best way for me to protect him would be to insist on our riding in the same carriage, you see, Mountbatten recalled, smiling. I knew that no one in that crowd would want to risk shooting me, and luckily it worked beautifully. But such was Jinnah's vanity, you know, that no sooner did we get inside the gates of the government house than he tapped my knee and said, Thank God I was able to bring you back alive.